Hi, I'm Craig Rowland, founder of Sandfly Security. In today's video, we're going to talk about Unix password hashes and also specifically Linux password hashes and kind of what they mean in terms of security as it is today. Now, password hashes on Linux are used as a way to obscure what a user's password is from theft. So essentially, when you type your password in, they will run it through a cryptographic algorithm to essentially obfuscate it and make it into something that's unreadable. The idea here is that if your password is stolen from the remote system, the attacker doesn't have immediate access to what it is. They actually need to break the algorithm by doing a brute force attack to try to reverse engineer what that password actually is. So it gives you a little bit of security. The problem with this premise is that over time, the various hashes that have been used have grown weaker and weaker as CPU and especially GPU speeds have come onto the scene. And what this means is that older algorithms can be subject to a very vicious attack in terms of a brute force. So, talking millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, or even billions of attempts a second against a password are very, very possible with today's hardware. And since users are typically very bad at picking a password, it makes the ability to recover what they used for their password very easy for them to crack. It's very easy to run through millions of password combinations and get what a user might have used. So over time, we've had this ongoing march of processor and CPU speed and GPU speeds, and then new algorithms needing to come into place to help protect the passwords against this ongoing increasing threat. So I put together a quick white paper that's available on our website that talks about some of the password hash types you might see on Linux and other Unix type operating systems out there, such as the BSDs, and a little bit of explanation about what they are and why you not want to be using them in terms of just labeling them as obsolete. Now, the earliest generation of Unix algorithms would use the crypt algorithm based loosely on DES. We call DES crypt, totally obsolete, very easily broken. We have some other ones around here too that later use SHA-1, MD5 on the Sonos operating systems, BSDI crypt. This was a BSD operating system commercially available in the mid to late 90s. That's obsolete. Again, you don't want to use any of these. Later on, the algorithms began taking a more sophisticated principle in terms of using multiple iterations, meaning that you had to do that hash many, many, many times in order to get a result, and this would help slow things down. But even still, they began to run into problems. One of the earlier attempts of this on Linux would be called MD5 crypt. And the MD5 crypt algorithm uses MD5 as a hashing primitive, and it runs it through 1,000 iterations, and then you get your password hash out the other end. This sounds well and good, except that MD5 is very easily optimized to run on high performance hardware, which means it could be run at, again, billions of attempts a second. And 1,000 iterations really isn't enough to slow down a brute force attack attempt. Later on, we began to get things like bcrypt. Bcrypt is a great algorithm in that it does actually slow things down in terms of doing brute force attacks. It can make it very significant in terms of performance impacts if you're trying to run a brute force engine. And you can increase the number of iterations to make it harder and harder over time as the hardware increases. Typically, you're going to see the bcrypt algorithms in the BSD operating systems. There are some early versions here that has a couple small bugs in it. They usually are prefixed with 2A or 2X. If you look in the password files, they were later replaced with the 2B and 2Y versions. I actually rate these as more secure than some of the later generations we have here. SMB CIFS, obsolete. You shouldn't really see that being used a lot, although it might be used for some Windows share access still. You still see SHA-256 and SHA-512. These are still used in a lot of Linux systems. I call them borderline. They are secure, but I would be a little careful if I was using them. Some of the hardware today, especially in the GPU side, is becoming extremely high performance, and these are really in the critical area that I'd want to be careful with them. On modern Linux systems, you're usually going to get an scrypt or a scrypt derivative called yescrypt, which is down here. These algorithms are designed to resist hardware attacks. They're designed to also be hardened against GPU attacks and specialized hardware. They're designed basically to require a lot of memory and processor time in order to do a successful brute force, and that makes some good things if you want to do today. Now, in terms of your Unix system and your Linux systems, what you want to look for here, I'm going to go to the terminal. And what I did is I catted out the password file on a Linux system here. And this Linux system had two different types of users of passwords. So the passwords are these things here under the etc password file. And here the $y Dollar, this is YesCrypt. This is the modern algorithm. This tells me that this user has a modern password hash that'll be highly resistant to brute force attack, assuming they correctly picked a good password, which not all people do, but let's say they had a good password. It'd be very hard to crack that password. Down here, we have a user called Jack Slack, and they have this $1. Now, if you remember, if I go into my presentation here, what that means is essentially they're running that old MD5, right? That $1 here means they're running MD5 crypt. This means that user has a very old password hash. Maybe it's from a legacy system that was brought over. And also, very likely that user has a very old password, hasn't been changed in a long time. That password, if it was stolen, I'd be very, very concerned that it would be cracked in short order. So that's kind of a view of the types of things that you're going to run to in terms of hashes. So on Linux in general, we're going to want to try to optimize for and pick these passwords, scrypt, YesCrypt, and here YesCrypt Gauss, which you probably won't see too much around here, but typically you're going to see one of these more modern algorithms and provide very high password resistance. Okay, so pay attention to some of the password hashing algorithms you have on your Linux systems. It sounds like it's not a very important topic, but I guarantee you it is. The reason for this is because if one of your Linux systems gets compromised and they steal the password list, if it's using these obsolete password hashes, it's very, very likely they're going to gain rapid lateral movement across your network using those stolen passwords. Now, it's not perfect. Passwords can be stolen in a variety of ways, especially on Linux, but let's not make it easy for them by using something that's obsolete. The problem too with obsolete passwords is typically they indicate you're running on an obsolete system, which means that that box is probably not patched, it's probably not kept secure, it's not being monitored correctly, which means it's also going to be vulnerable to attack, which can lead to a variety of other problems, and we don't want that either. So I'm Craig Rowland from Sandfly Security. Thanks a lot for watching my video on Linux password hash types. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out our website. We'll have this paper posted on there along with some other tips on what you could do to help generate more secure passwords. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment or a question if you have any below, and check out our other videos as well. I hope to see you again. Thank you. Bye.